Welcome back to eSIMstudios. My name is Taylor Bell. Now, I have some big news when it comes to CPUs, when it comes to system on chips, right? When it comes to the silicone, because not that type of silicone. Come on, guys, get your heads out of the gutter. Now, I came across some interesting information when it comes to Samsung. As you know, Samsung has their Exynos CPU. Hasn't really been up to par when it comes to the competition. Now, let's just put this out on the table. There's two parts of Samsung CPUs when it comes to the CPU department for Samsung. They not only make a CPU, right? That's what's called their Exynos CPU, and they also manufacture, or should I say, they design CPUs, which is the Exynos, but they also manufacture, physically put the CPU together, and that is called Samsung Foundry. Now, I came across some interesting information, as I mentioned, that I had to make a video about. So, the Samsung Exynos, we're talking about CPUs now, they're 2400, which was in a limited number of devices last year. I believe it was in the S24 FE, right? Well, Samsung is trying to get back in the CPU world, and I've mentioned on a couple of live streams, a couple of my shows ago, that Samsung, the big picture here for Samsung, big picture, right? Because CPU costs are rising. To TSMC, who Qualcomm uses to make their CPUs, MediaTek uses TSMC to make their CPUs. Their costs are rising. The big picture here, Samsung wants to have in the future, every Samsung phone to have a Samsung CPU, right? Apple has their Apple iPhone with an Apple CPU. Xiaomi now it makes their own CPU. So in the future, you'll see all Xiaomi phones with all Xiaomi CPUs. Google, all Pixel phones have Google Tensor CPUs. So you can see the trend. So it only makes sense, right? So you're thinking, well, what's going on here? Samsung's got their famous phones, the Galaxies. They make CPUs, but they're not putting their CPUs in their phones. Well, they haven't had much success with that lately. So it looks like the tides are turning. As I mentioned, Exynos 2400 was in last year's S24 FE. The upcoming Flip series, the Flip 7 and the Flip 7 FE. This is where everything turns for Samsung. This is where the tide turns. So globally, the Z Flip 7 is going to support Samsung's new Exynos 2500 CPU. The Flip 7 FE is going to use last year's Exynos 2400 CPU. They've made major advancements in both designing the CPUs, Exynos, and they've hit a milestone in their Foundry department, which means actually making the CPUs. So the 2500 is a big improvement over the 2400. Now, there is I believe it's a 17% increase just in overall CPU performance, but where you get the really big leap is in the NPU, the neural processing unit. What does that do? AI. Google's moving towards AI on device. No more sending it to the cloud. A couple things might be, but the Pixel 10, a lot of stuff will be on device now. Samsung's going to move towards that direction, and the 2500 is said to have a 39% increase in NPU performance. What does that mean? That means more on-device processing, no more sending stuff to the cloud. Now, little known fact is that if you go back probably 2 to 3 years ago, Samsung planned, this was in their plans, for all the S25s we have now, the S25, S25 Plus, S25 SE, FE, Jesus Christ, S25 Edge, and S25 Ultra, all S25 models were supposed to have the Samsung Exynos 2500 CPU in them. And I mean in them meaning globally, not just region specific, globally. That was their big plans. Now, they hit a speed bump, so to speak, since I'm driving. They hit a speed bump in the way they manufacture these, meaning their yield rates. Yield rates, there is a benchmark number of 70%. These wafers that they print their CPUs on are big chips, big circles. That's why they call them chips. That's why they call them wafers. They were currently right before the S25 series was out, they were at right around 30% yield rate, meaning 30% out of 100 were only good enough to put in phones. So 3 out of every 10 CPUs on each wafer was good enough to put in phones. That's not good enough. The industry standard is typically right around 60, but preferably 70%, meaning 7 out of 10 on that wafer are good enough to go into phones. If it's anything less, you start wasting money, and it's just not worth it because this stuff is expensive. They've gotten some success lately, so that's why you did not see the Exynos 2500 in the S25 series. Now the 2500 is on a 3 nanometer, but they have a new packing process. They have a new way that they manufacture these CPUs. And it's different from TSMC. TSMC uses a different method of manufacturing these CPUs. Samsung's method is called GAA method. Relatively new, it's been around for a while. The theory has been around for a while, but they've implemented it a couple years ago, but they really started to fine tune it over this last 6 months. And since Samsung has implemented that GAA packing technology, we see their yield rate starting to get higher and higher and higher. Well, guess what? It's at about 60% now, and it's continually going up a little bit every year. So since the yield rates are not good, they didn't put the 2500 in the S25 series. That's why they're putting all the 2500s, Exynos 2500s, in the Flip series. The Flip series is going to be externally, meaning out here in the public, to a lot of people, it's going to go right over the head. It's just another Galaxy, it's just a new Flip. Not just a new Flip. Internally, this is a revolution for Samsung. Internally, this is going to be their baby that they're going to rockabye, right? Internally, this is going to be a new day, a new age for Samsung Foundry and the Samsung CPUs, Samsung chipsets, Exynos chipsets. Because here on out, the plan is they would like to put Exynos 2600 in the S26 models. Now, that's wishful thinking, right? Big plans, big future, big roadmap. However, Samsung knows that the chances of them manufacturing, because the 2500 is on a 3 nanometer. Here's the big change. The 2600, Exynos 2600 is on a 2 nanometer node, which is very difficult, but they're applying this new GAA packing technology, and they're starting to have some success, right? They're creeping up on that 60%, and once you get close to 70, it's a go. But they have a backup plan. That would be the ideal situation. Exynos 2600 and all S26 models. But here's a negotiation Samsung is having with Qualcomm. And I'll make this quick. We'll end it here soon. So Qualcomm has all their Snapdragon chips, right, CPUs, manufactured by TSMC, meaning Qualcomm designs it, TSMC manufactures it, makes them, right? Well, Samsung is in negotiations with Qualcomm to actually manufacture the upcoming S26 CPUs, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 2. What? That's right. Samsung is in negotiations with Qualcomm to manufacture only the 8 Elite Gen 2s that are going to be going in the S26 series on Samsung's Foundry GAA 2 nanometer packing process. All other Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 2s would be manufactured by TSMC. So it would truly be designed for, you know how they have that moniker? We have the new Snapdragon chip. What is it? Designed for Galaxy or custom for Galaxy, whatever they're saying is. Well, this and all that is they just simply overclock it just a little bit, right? Well, this would truly be just for Samsung. Now, all Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 2s would be on the 2 nanometer node that's on Samsung Foundry's GAA packing process. However, all other 8 Elite Gen 2 CPUs that would be made by TSMC would be on a 3 nanometer node. See, TSMC, they're right neck and neck with Samsung when it comes to 2 nanometers. Every year or two, they get a little smaller and a little smaller. And both Samsung and both TSMC, who manufacture CPUs, are just starting to finalize their packing process for these next generation 2 nanometer chips. And TSMC probably could manufacture them on their new 2 nanometer process, but Qualcomm is gonna order millions and millions of chips. If it was a smaller order, they could probably do it. But since this is going to be an order full of millions of CPUs, they're just going to fall back on their really good 3 nanometer process. But Samsung looks like they might beat TSMC to the punch. So moving forward, again, Samsung would, in a perfect world, would put the 2600 Exynos in all S26 models, but they're realistic and they realize it's probably getting ahead of themselves a little bit. So what they're negotiating is with Qualcomm. Samsung's telling Qualcomm, hey, since they're designed for Galaxy, why don't you let us you design it, we manufacture it, and we'll put them in our phones. Whoever you want to deal with your other CPUs like OnePlus 15 and Oppo, you can put those 8 Elite Gen 2s, you can have those CPUs manufactured by TSMC, but we want to do our own, right? That's what Samsung is saying. So they're going to do that for 1 year. So they'll actually have the advantage. It looks like Samsung is doing a turnaround pretty quick. So they're going to actually bring the first full mass production 2 nanometer chip to the market with the S26. Now, moving forward, that will be the last Qualcomm chip you will see in a flagship Samsung phone. Now that we moving ahead 2 years from now, Samsung Galaxy S27 series will have the Samsung Exynos. I guess by that time, it may or may not be the 2600. It may or may not be the 2700. Samsung may prolong the upcoming, because the 2500 is coming out with the new Flip 7. The 2600, they may delay that and introduce the 2600 for the S27 series, or they may, since it'll be a year later, may introduce it to the 2700, Exynos 2700. But I can guarantee you, maybe not on this upcoming S26 series, because it is 6, 7 months away. It's probably too soon. I can guarantee you on all S27 models and all Samsung flagship models moving forward, starting with the S27 series, those will have all Exynos CPUs moving forward, and Samsung will join the elites just like Google with their Tensor chip, just like Xiaomi with their X-Ring. It's and Apple, how could I forget them? It's because I don't think about Apple. And Apple with their Bionic chips. Samsung, it is imperative for their mobile division and for Samsung as a whole to move in this direction, and they're throwing all their resources in their packing department because for whatever reason in the past, they could not get that packing system up to par. But this new GAA packing process looks like they got something really nice. So just wanted to put that out there. Thinking of the future moving forward, Samsung will have an elite CPU moving forward on all their flagships. I can't wait. I want to get this Flip 7. I've gotten every Flip model in the past, and this year I was like, yeah, it's kind of the same, whatever, but I think I'm going to get this new Flip 7 just because I want to see what this new Samsung Exynos 2500 can do. The power efficiency is supposed to be down 25%, so it's supposed to be cooler, run more efficient. Because on those Flip models, the CPU is on the very top of where you fold it open on the Flip. The CPU is on the very top behind the display. In the past, all those Flip models, they used to get warm up top, right? They used to get really warm. And with this 2500 being 15% more better performance CPU-wise, 39% better in the NPU, so for AI, and then 25% more efficient when it comes to battery life and cooling. It sounds like a match made in heaven. I cannot wait. I'm actually getting really excited for it. Now that I don't think I'm going to be getting the Nothing Phone 3, I'm going to buy the Blue 3A, and then I'm going to buy the Flip 7 on a trade-in discount from Samsung. And, it is. If you missed my Nothing Phone 3 video, go back and watch the replay from today with the Nothing Phone 3. You're not going to want to miss it. But Samsung fans can rejoice. I think we have really, really bright days ahead of us. I'm so excited. I cannot wait for this. Look, this is a good thing for the mobile industry. This is a good thing for Samsung. I've been waiting. I've been wondering about this for so long. Why can't they get their shit together and have their own CPU and their own phones like everybody else? It looks like the day is about to come. The day will soon be here. So very excited for that, Samsung. I got my fingers crossed, and I wish you nothing but the best. We need you in this mobile industry to move this forward right along with everybody else. You're a big slice of that pie, and you need to get your CPU, your Foundry business up to par so you can claim you have your own CPU along with everybody else. So appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel for more tech news, for more tech reviews. And if you want to hear the latest and greatest podcast of the day, daily podcast, not from me, I've generated a podcast. Very articulate, very entertaining podcast. I'm going to put a link below in the description box below. It's going to my other YouTube channel, Mobile Tech News. I also have a podcast at Mobile Tech News Podcast that you're going to want to hear. Trust me. I'll put a link for this in the description box below that describes everything I said and more. Maybe a little more articulate, maybe a little nicer put together because I don't have a script I'm reading. But click the link below and it'll give you a clear idea of what's going on with Samsung and their CPUs. Peace.